everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, chatting with ISO experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with Stuart Kelly, Chief Commercial Officer at LRQA, and Kevin Franklin, LRQA's Chief Product Officer. Glad to talk with you gentlemen today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, X.
And today's topic is transition talks. What's changing in ISO standards? But before we dive into this, let's first learn a little bit about our guest. Let's start with Kevin. Can you give me a little bit of history about yourself?
Thanks, X. Yeah, my name's Kevin Franklin. I'm the Chief Product Officer for LRQA. And actually, this topic's particularly close to my heart, especially ISO 14001, because I was lucky enough to be trained to that standard myself around 10 years ago. So it's very timely as well, given that that's the kind of date of the last refresh. Anyway, very much looking forward to this conversation together.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And Stuart, how about you?
Yeah, again, great to be here. So Stuart Kelly, I'm Chief Commercial Officer for LRQA, and I'm particularly excited in this subject, quite sadly, because I probably started my professional career just as the first ISO standard that was published and came into play with 9001. So I've kind of been here through the inception and actually seeing it mature into a living and breathing way of working for a number of businesses around the world. So, and I'm working with a lot of global clients now on their supply chain assurance programs and in their quality management programs to ensure that their risk is managed and that their brand is protected. So all of these changes are very relevant, and I think they also show a change in direction in terms of the world and what it's looking for from businesses in terms of their moral compass and their legal requirements. So great to have the conversation and see where we go.
Yeah, I was reviewing some of the changes that are coming, and it does seem like it's aligning a little bit more with what's going on in the world, especially with 14001, just kind of evolving into the next step. Well, we are at the start of one of the most significant shifts in the ISO standards. It's been nearly a decade for most of these standards, so a lot of time in between. 3 major standards are on the horizon for updates: 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001. Kevin, what is behind this wave of updates?
It's a great question, X. I think firstly, as you pointed out, these updates reflect a conscious shift really towards an update and a view of the ISO frameworks that better reflects the world we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a lot more around the integration of advanced technology, data-driven decision-making. There's a lot about sustainability really at the core of these management systems. Equally, it reflects the need for enhanced organizational resilience and really repositions ISO and these management systems at the center of a lot of the sustainability discussion, which is a very different position to where it's been over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have anything on that, Stuart? What are you seeing from some of those changes coming in?
Yeah, I think it's more of a generic comment, really, which is just how these standards evolve over time. And we have to remember why they're there as well. What's the purpose behind these standards in the first place? And it's to get everyone to a minimum benchmark of quality of process and management systems. And good standards, when you get the vast majority of people to that level, need to then evolve and move on to the next level. So this is about bringing everyone now on another step forward in the journey of quality, of management, of assurance. And as Kevin said, reacting to and adapting to the ever-changing world around them. So, this is something that will continue to happen, maybe more frequently, maybe as frequently, we don't know. Yeah, it all depends very much on how quickly the world evolves and the requirements of the individual customers and companies around the world that are using the standards evolve. But this is a normal process that people should understand, that once we get to base, it's time to kick on to the next base, and that's exactly what's happening here.
Absolutely. It seems to me that some of them are almost a little more externally focused. It's for the benefit of the business, but it's also benefit for the environment. It's not like we have to follow these rules, or we wanted to make sure our employees are safe when it comes to 45001, but it's almost like, how is it going to help the overall world by adopting these standards? I see that a little bit more, at least from an American point of view. Would you agree?
I look at it a little differently, X. The way I look at it is that a lot of what may previously have been a line of thinking, such as what you've just shared, is has kind of matured to the point where it's now about actually how these can be integrated into core business and facilitate the transformation and evolution of business. So it's not about externalities, it's more about the implications and impacts of that on the companies themselves, and therefore how the companies should adapt in order to stay strong, resilient, and profitable.
Hmm.
Really good example is something like 14,001, which increasingly requires, climate change related evaluations and integration. And that's not for the sake of the external world, it's for the sake of the impact that climate change has on the business and the financial impacts that that might then lead to down the line for companies, investors, regulators, stakeholders. So I think it's really about internalizing a lot of that into core business practices to better prepare businesses, make them more resilient to really what we're seeing happening in the world today.
That's a great take. So 14,001 is the first on the chronological order of the newest update. Kevin, what stage are we at in that ISO 14,001 update?
So 14,001:2026, fingers crossed, is currently at the draft international standards stage, so the DIS stage. In essence, this means that they're roughly 95% technically accurate. And we are now at a point where the standard is out for ISO member country review and voting, hopefully approval. If it is approved without technical changes, this means the standard could be formally published in as soon as like January or Q1 of 2026. In the interim, it is available in the public domain for companies to prepare, to start thinking about what the implications of these changes will be for their business and how they adapt to those changes.
Okay. What are the key themes that you see in the new update?
I mean, there are quite a few, and I know we'll talk to these in more detail, but one of the first ones is around the kind of harmonized structure. So we've seen a lot of this in the ISO standards over the last few years, and we've got a lot more of that now in place within 1401. So consistency in terminology across the different clauses, modernizing a lot of the terminology. The second is, of course, the climate change amendment from 2024 is now fully integrated into the standard. And with that, we've also got stronger alignment and recognition of other aspects of environment, like biodiversity. Plus, we have a life cycle perspective coming into the standard through the environmental aspects section. And we also see new requirements around leadership, external communication, enhanced planning, and value chain engagement. So there's quite a lot of change. I think just a quick side point on the climate change annex. This is really important because it requires businesses to determine whether climate change is a relevant issue to their organization, but it will also require auditors to confirm that climate relevance has been evaluated, and if it is material, that it's incorporated into objectives, risk registers, operational controls, etc. So there's a lot of very powerful changes here.
Yeah, that does sound like it. Stuart, do you have any take on that?
In my view, it's now trying to consolidate some of those external pressures and some of the alternative arrangements around regulatory requirements, etc., into that quality framework, so that the businesses have got a more robust process around what they're actually doing here. So for me, it's a positive step forward, but I think there are a lot of requirements that are being kind of brought together, and a number of reasons for that around some of the changes and the shifts that we're seeing in the world. And therefore these standards are designing themselves to keep up with the pace that is now happening all around them, quite frankly.
Great take. All right, so clients are asking this question specifically, Kevin. Do these changes reflect regulatory shifts, stakeholder pressure, or something else entirely?
Yes, to all of the above. Xavier. So
yes.
Yes.
I agree.
In terms of the regulatory piece, I mean, these standards definitely are recognizing, for example, things like the European Union Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the climate-related financial disclosure requirements, or US Securities and Exchange Commission SEC rules, around things like climate.
Yes.
There's a lot of external regulatory requirements, whether they're stock exchange or government requirements specifically now on climate change. And there's a lot of recognition of that in these standards. Equally, investor pressures, right, on these same sorts of topics, they're being recognized. Consumer expectations. We know a high percentage of consumers prioritize changes around and make decisions about purchasing related to environmental reasons.
Absolutely do, yeah.
We also know that digital integration is a key part of this. It's not one of your points specifically. You said regulatory, stakeholder pressure, or something else entirely. So the digital landscape, whether it's AI or everything else that's happening, is in the something else entirely phase for sure.
Right.
But we see a lot of recognition around things like AI, IoT sensors for real-time monitoring, etc., all being recognized and potentially integrated into these standards. And then we've got a lot about risk management. Also, the kind of whole piece around competitive advantage that businesses can obtain by doing a good job of implementing these standards and implementing into their core business. So there really are a lot of drivers that all come together here. It's kind of all of the above and more, really positioning companies for, a much more competitive and dynamic, fast-moving operating environment.
Yeah, can certainly see that. Now, Stuart, what do evolving standards say about the expectations being placed on organizations today? What Kevin just said is a whole lot. So that's a big change, big update. How should they respond to that?
Yeah, it's a great challenge for them, I think, and to answer the question, it's probably worth just jumping back to why a lot of businesses are actually, certificated to the standard in the first place. A lot of businesses do this because it became a requirement for them to continue to trade in the market. A lot of buyers and a lot of larger companies, organizations, manufacturers, etc., were putting that pressure on the supply chain to actually have a more robust system in place and to give them confidence in the products and the raw materials that they were actually buying. And that was a great place to start because it put this framework in place where you could have more assurance and more confidence. And in the businesses that you were actually then trusting with your supply chain and ultimately trusting your brand, your reputation and your business on. So, all of that is great. But now these changes moving into the future are really stressing more towards businesses being able to demonstrate more compliance with the regulatory frameworks. As Kevin mentioned, there's a lot of that being brought in. And again, to keep this relevant, to keep it real, and to stop divesting into a number of different things, the standards have to evolve to be fit for purpose around that. We asked the question at the beginning, X, about, is this inward looking? Is it outward looking? It's probably all of the above. But this is around making sure now that organizations can show that they have got an outcome-based approach to everything they're doing. 14,001 is coming live. 2026, with fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
And therefore, this is about demonstrating not just that you're thinking about things, but that you're actually progressively doing things. And that's really important.
What I would just say, in addition to Stuart's points, which are spot on, it's not just that expectations for business have evolved and that there's lots more of them, but it's also that the availability of information about what businesses are doing is much more freely available. So what I mean, for example, is if we take something in the environmental space, such as potentially some form of pollution that might be coming from a manufacturing facility, right? Historically, that may have been something that was discovered by a regulator. Now, today, that could be discovered by pretty much anybody. It could end up in social media, and it could become available in the public domain, and you could have investors following up and asking questions straight away.
Right.
So it's not just that expectations are higher, it's that information is freely available, it's that it's digitally available, it's that it's online, it's that everything moves a lot faster. So businesses also have to adapt to that landscape as well. And all the points Stuart raised about systemic thinking, outcomes-based approaches, real-time monitoring, going beyond compliance, become increasingly critical in a digitally enabled world.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, if you haven't moved it forward, somebody might tell you to move it forward in a way that you might not like. And it is quick. I mean, it can be up in a thing before lunchtime.
It's a great point. I mean, I think, Kevin, if we think back to the early days in our career, everyone was focused on the audit and passing the next inspection or the next audit, and then you almost like Christmas. I always use the analogy of Christmas, that you get the Christmas decorations out. When the auditor comes, you get everything out, you put it up, make it look pretty, and then when they go, you put it all back under the stairs or in the attic until next year, and then you do it all again. Every business is being audited every single day by the consumer, by members of the public, by social media, by iPhones and other, devices that are used to capture in real time what's actually happening. So it's a really good point that Kevin makes. And I think, the benefit of the standard transitions is hopefully to repurpose them to enable businesses to be fit for purpose every single day, because this isn't about preparing for an event. This is about being always on. This is about always having that continual program of process, of assurance in place in everything you do and breathe every single day. So yeah, it's a really good point.
So basically, it's Christmas every day, to go follow your analogy.
It's Christmas every day,
Yeah.
right?
You got to keep the decorations up and just make them part of the house now, right? You got to make it part of your business.
Exactly.
So as we end here on 14,001, why does this matter now, Stuart? We're talking about it, that it's timely. What's the really big picture of why it matters now?
I think we're at a pivot point, and I mean globally. I think we're at a point where, if I'm being very genuine as an individual, then the standards to this point have done what they set out to do. And Kevin's mentioned a whole plethora of additional landscape regulatory expectations, regulations that are coming in different parts of the world. And if the standards don't evolve, then they become almost less relevant for the businesses that are currently enjoying, being certificated to that level. So I think what they're designing to do and the kind of why is, it's important to make sure we capture the general direction that the world is moving in, and that we make sure that those standards are continue to be fit for purpose, because they're there as a guide, they're there as a support, and they're there as a tool and a mechanism for businesses to do the right thing and to stay fit for purpose in the world. So I think that's the big why for me, is that our supply chains have become instantaneous. The world has become at our fingertips and at our doorstep in no time at all now. And therefore, people think nothing about buying something from 15,000 miles away, because they can get it literally in a couple of days, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before, you were completely reliant on your local area. The world's changed since these standards were first written and even revised, I think Kevin said 10 years ago. So I think that's the big why it matters now, because the public perception, the public priority, the expectations of the consumer on businesses has evolved and moved, and they're not just looking at the product, they're looking at how, why, where that product came from, the landscape, the impact it's having on the environment. And we've got all of the legislative changes that are literally daily happening. And therefore there needs to be some sort of roadmap and some sort of backbone and way of working that actually keeps businesses honest, true, and having the right outcomes to stay viable, stay alive.
Well put. Kevin, anything to follow up with that?
I was actually just thinking on Stuart's very last word or two, staying viable. I mean, I think this is a critical reason for why this matters now. We've rarely been at a point in history where companies are under so much pressure financially. With all of this change happening, with inflation, with, tariffs, with AI, there's just a massive amount of pressure on businesses of pretty much all types. The last thing companies can afford now is a multi-million-dollar fine for not complying with environmental regulations. That's why it matters now from my perspective. This is a way to make sure that that fine doesn't hit your business. This is a way to ensure and assure the long-term sustainability of your business as an organization. And I think without standards like this, you're very exposed.
Great way to put it. Very exposed to all of what we spoke about. Fabulous. Really appreciate you guys today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I love these kind of conversations when you can get a little bit of the details of what's changing, but see it as a whole picture and the evolution of ISO standards. Really appreciate you guys today.
Anytime.
And thank you. Thank you for the coordination and the comparing. It's been greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you, X. Thanks, Stuart.
We want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope that it has been informative for you. Now, if you're looking for more information about core business solutions, now that we're an LRQA company, how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, or even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. If you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, please be sure to do so, and that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's dropped next week. Have a great day.